Hey everybody, my name is Nick Henderson, co-founder at 4playernetwork.com and host of 4Player Podcast, and these are my top 10 games of 2013. Few games garnered as much controversy in recent years as DMC, Capcom's reboot of the Devil May Cry franchise. It was announced at TGS 2011 and was met by immediate backlash thanks to a reimagined, edgier Dante and the development rights being handed off to Ninja Theory, a team not exactly known for their deep combat systems. Despite years of complaining by core fans of the franchise, of which I consider myself to be, Capcom stuck to their guns and let Ninja Theory bring their vision to life using their signature cinematic style. What we got in 2013 was a more than competent action game set in a beautifully imagined world straddling the line between hell and the real world as we know it. And as it turns out, Dante's new look had little to no bearing on the overall experience. Despite his new hairstyle, the rebellious, trash-talking demon hunter that we all know and love remained intact. What really made this game stand out though was its willingness to take itself a little bit more seriously than previous games in the franchise, something that surely pleased some while disappointing others. To me, it was not something the series needed, but a welcome change nonetheless. Throw in some well-choreographed cinematics and a terrific soundtrack featuring one of the few industrial bands I actually like, and it's easy to see why this package spoke to me the way it did. On top of the enhanced presentation, Ninja Theory delivered a combat system that was robust in ways I didn't expect. Switching between angel and demon weapons on the fly altered the fighting style mid-combat and provided new ways of handling crowd control. Dante's classic Devil Trigger returned but with a slight twist and aesthetic flourish that made it feel new as well. Combat was satisfying and the most fun I've had with an action game like this since Devil May Cry 4. It wasn't a step forward for the series necessarily, but I feel Ninja Theory did the franchise justice and avoided taking what many expected to be a step backwards. Pikmin 3 was my first experience with Nintendo's quirky Pikmin franchise, and easily one of the few games that make me not regret buying a Wii U. Players control 3 space captains as they scavenge an alien planet for fruit juice that will be used to save their home planet from famine. As one might expect, they come into contact with Pikmin and learn to use them to scavenge for supplies, combat alien predators, and pave the way for exploration. It's a well-established concept already, but one that has not yet lost its charm. For those well-versed in the Pikmin experience, you are already familiar with how colorful, lighthearted, and charming the experience can be. The franchise has made a spectacular transition to HD and exemplifies the proper way to implement Wii Remote controls. Seriously, this game controls like a dream. It's a shame actually that so few games in the Wii or Wii U can knock it out of the park quite like Pikmin does. For those who aren't privy to using the Wii Remote, the game also features gamepad and Pro Controller support to varying degrees of success. Nintendo's addition of 2 new types of Pikmin also added a lot of variety to the puzzles and combat scenarios, as well as set the stage for some truly awesome boss encounters. In fact, Pikmin 3 features some of the best boss encounters I've experienced all year. In addition to the traditional red, blue, and yellow Pikmin are brutish rock Pikmin and flying pink Pikmin. These open up a lot of doors and force players to think of new ways to reach new areas or combat new enemy types. It also makes managing your 100 Pikmin team a bit less random and a bit more strategic. It's also worth noting that the time limit has been removed, and as long as you maintain a supply of fruit juice on hand by finding fruit scattered throughout each world, you aren't in danger of losing the game entirely. For those who enjoy the tension created by the time limits, the day-night cycle that governs your time on the ground can easily create some exciting, tense moments as you struggle to carry supplies or enemy carcasses back to the ship before the sun sets. Honestly, what pushed this game through the ranks though and onto my top 10 list is the addition of a fun competitive multiplayer mode called Bingo Battle, in which 2 players scour the map in search of items or enemies to kill and bring back to the ship in hopes of filling out a row on a bingo card. It's a wonderful twist on Pikmin gameplay and simple enough for anyone familiar with the game itself to jump in and enjoy. It fills out the package nicely and will charm the pants off you in ways that only Nintendo can. Is Pikmin 3 a system seller? Probably not, but it is a game that deserves a spot in any Wii U owner's game library. Oh, BioShock Infinite. This is one of those games that everybody loves to bitch about. Our very own podcast discussion surrounding the game was heated, and opinions across our site and others are varied to say the least. Did the game perhaps rely too heavily on frantic, disorienting combat? Was the philosophical mindfuck story perhaps a bit too pretentious for some people's tastes? Whatever it was, it didn't prevent me from enjoying the hell out of this completely original and frankly, unexpected twist on a universe that I already adore. Rather than bringing fans back to Rapture once more, following a slightly underwhelming sequel, Irrational Games went back to the drawing board and surprised everyone by creating Columbia, a city in the clouds. A beautiful, cultured, misguided, doomed civilization that held many secrets and perhaps even the key to understanding the secrets of the universe. From the moment I stepped foot on Columbia, I was captivated and blown away by Irrational's creation. It was like a vertical slice of America, commonly referred to as the best country on earth, frozen in time and lifted to the heavens. It was absolutely beautiful. The city itself, a contender for Character of the Year to be sure. Not to mention Booker DeWitt, Elizabeth, and Songbird. The journey from beginning to end was definitely reminiscent of my adventures in Rapture, but it felt fresh and new. And that ending. Some may love it, while some may hate it. I found it to be earth-shattering and dramatic in all the right ways. It wasn't perfect, but it was an example of what game storytelling should strive for, and what games as a storytelling medium can be. Unfortunately, combat in Infinite, while satisfying, felt like a little bit of a step backwards for the series. The game had a nasty habit of bombarding the player with enemies, and it did this often enough that the game actually started to feel a little bit like a corridor shooter. RPG elements took a bit of a backseat, and exploration seemed to always be punctuated by gunfire and explosions. Surely an attempt to appeal to a more mainstream audience, but I hardly blame them. The game was surely expensive to develop. With that said, skyrails were beautifully implemented, vigors were plentiful, if not lacking a bit of originality, enemy designs were haunting, and there were enough beautifully developed characters here that it would be impossible not to pay my respects to this game on my top 10 list. This one I honestly didn't see coming. Crystal Dynamics' long-awaited return to the Tomb Raider franchise was a pleasant surprise for most of us here at 4Player. The game went back to Lara Croft's roots and did what it could to humanize her while taking a drastically different approach to the standard Tomb Raider formula. This time around, players fill the shoes of a young, inexperienced Lara as she is left stranded on an island after her ship runs aground. She is forced to learn to survive and ultimately bloom into the Lara that audiences have come to know and love over the years. As is the trend, Crystal Dynamics made a concerted effort to inject some cinematic flair into the franchise as well, aligning it more with the now insanely popular Uncharted franchise. It's a valiant effort on their part too, since this origin story both entertains and unfolds at a spectacular pace. It won't win any awards for originality, but it certainly elevates the series for me by creating a context for the character and her adventures that I can actually get behind. It's good old-fashioned popcorn entertainment. Perhaps most surprising is that the game manages to capture the spirit of a Tomb Raider while all but abandoning the Tomb Raider element completely. In fact, the game is not just a third-person shooter this time around, but an extremely competent shooter to boot. A surprising choice to be sure, but one that ultimately works thanks to the methodical pacing of the game's narrative and some super satisfying shooter mechanics that allow for skillful use of the game's weapons. Speaking of weaponry, the game's arsenal packs a serious punch and provides some wonderful feedback to the player. The game's bow and arrow and shotgun types were particularly fun to wield. The game also delivers a refreshing world structure that delivers the best of both linear and open world game design. The game benefits from the calculated storytelling methods that linearity allows for, while frequently funneling the player into big open environments with branching paths and hidden tombs. And while most of these hidden tombs are completely optional, they serve to add a variety to the gameplay and give the player a sense of freedom to explore. On top of that, there are plenty of hidden treasures to collect, animals to hunt, and skill or weapon upgrades to unlock. In the end, Tomb Raider is a super positive start to a new chapter for the franchise, and is honestly a direction I fully support. The things that ultimately kept it from the top of my list were some unnecessarily gruesome death animations, think Dead Space, bleh, and a slightly disappointing lack of environmental puzzles and raiding of tombs. Go figure. Crystal Dynamics certainly has the right idea here, and I couldn't be more excited about the future of the franchise. Good horror is a rarity in gaming these days, but has slowly started to creep back into the limelight thanks to popular PC games like Amnesia and the growth and popularity of indie game development. Red Barrels, a small indie studio from Canada, made up of talent who have worked on Prince of Persia, Assassin's Creed, and Uncharted, hit us with Outlast in 2013. My first experience with this game at PAX East was truly special, and it almost single-handedly reinvigorated my enthusiasm for horror as a viable genre in games, prompting me to play games like Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs later this year as well. Outlast puts players in control of one of the world's dumbest people. Seriously. What person decides to investigate a creepy, abandoned asylum where mad science and religious extremism have apparently collided? You have, that's who, and thank God for that, because this game got under my skin in some truly unexpected ways. Like many other games in the genre as of late, the player is completely incapable of engaging enemies in combat. However, the game manages to stand out from the crowd because the mechanics that replace the combat are slick, accessible, and fun. As one might expect, the asylum has been ransacked and taken by its deranged former occupants. Here, the insane run free, and you are armed with nothing more than a handycam with a nifty night vision filter that allows you to see in the dark, of which there is a lot. With the power in most of the facility completely out, claustrophobic hallways and rain-soaked courtyards have become almost completely pitch black. The night vision filter, fully loaded with a chilling activation sound effect, quickly becomes an invaluable resource that must be managed accordingly. Running out of batteries at the wrong time can lead to some devastating results, or in my case, some of the most heart-pounding moments of my gaming career. The game also makes great use of intuitive first-person controls and contextual platforming. Doors can be opened carefully or loudly depending on input from the player, and peering around corners before taking the plunge all add to the tense atmosphere that permeates the experience. There are plenty of opportunities to climb, shimmy across ledges, or make desperate leaps across dark chasms as you are being chased by the insane. Oh, and did I mention you are being constantly pursued by a nemesis-like creature throughout this entire experience? Right. Well, you are. Have fun. And as any good horror game should, Outlast also makes terrific use of sound design. The game's ambient noise is chilling, and the soundtrack is effective at getting your blood pumping at the right moments. Creeping through this game at a, let's just call it methodical pace, was an audio tour de force, and one that I look forward to experiencing again when the DLC hits in early 2014. All in all, Outlast is a shining example of how horror doesn't necessarily guarantee shoddy controls and piss-poor, boring mechanics. Bravo, Red Barrels, bravo. Now for my top 5 games of 2013. And to my surprise, it's been a doozy of a year for Nintendo. Despite being the butt of a lot of jokes thanks to the Wii U and its sparse catalog, the 3DS continues to astound with its seemingly endless supply of fun games that straddle the fence between casual and core gaming. No other game this year has epitomized this quite like Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, the long-awaited sequel to the original unexpected GameCube hit. Now in the hands of third-party developer Next Level Games, Luigi's Mansion returned in a brilliant way. While still conceptually identical to its predecessor, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon managed to innovate and expand the experience far more than I originally thought possible, while playing to the strength of the 3DS and remaining perfectly portable. In this charming-ass sequel, Luigi reluctantly agrees to help Professor Gadd hunt down fragments of the Dark Moon, a mystical device that contains ghosts. Armed with the Poltergust 5000, a specialized vacuum cleaner designed for busting ghosts, Luigi sets out to find the fragments that have been scattered among 5 different mansions. Of course, the biggest benefit of the additional mansions is the added variety that was lacking the first time around. Each mansion is fun and jam-packed with unique platforming or exploration challenges. The dedicated player will spend plenty of time exploring every nook and cranny, finding hidden treasure, trapdoors, and secret rooms scattered throughout each mansion. The types of ghosts scattered throughout the world require various strategies that make combat, quote-unquote, a lot of fun to engage in. Depending on the size of the room and the number of ghosts present, some of these encounters can actually provide a bit of unexpected challenge. It also makes me really want another Ghostbusters game. Or movie. Or both. But by far, the best thing about this game is the wonderful structure of its gameplay. Each mansion is broken down into chapters that can be each completed in about 15 to 20 minutes, making it perfect for playing on the go. Think Super Mario 64 with the stars associated with each painting and you get the idea. The beautiful thing is that it does this without sacrificing the presentation or sense of being a full-blown console game. It's perfect. Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon is beautiful, even in 3D, incredibly well designed, and perfectly matched to the appropriate platform. But above all else, it's a charming Nintendo game that should be played by anyone who owns and loves their 3DS. Try as I may, I can't deny the brilliance of Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell Blacklist. Previous entries in the series are games that I have typically admired from afar, appreciating them as an enthusiast but never quite committing to playing them myself. This is usually thanks to issues with accessibility. A few years ago, Splinter Cell Conviction made strides in enhancing the accessibility of the series to newcomers, but alienated core fans of the franchise. This year, Ubisoft beautifully blended the two styles together and created what is, in my opinion, the best espionage game of the generation. That isn't Metal Gear. As a fan of Conviction's fast-paced storytelling techniques and mechanics, I was ecstatic to see them make a return, but blown away by how refined and fun the stealth mechanics were this time around. It felt like a true return to form in a lot of ways. The feeling that came over me when I effectively used light sources and gadgets to my advantage on the battlefield made me feel like a true predator. On top of that, Sam is more mobile and easier to control than ever before. Mechanics like Mark and Execute make a welcome return, but are balanced in such a way to encourage more methodical gameplay. There are so many fun and satisfying tools to use in this game that combat continues to feel addicting and varied throughout the surprisingly long campaign. If your espionage itch isn't scratched after a good 18 to 20 hours, optional side missions will provide a hefty dose of additional gameplay. So from top to bottom, I can't stress how much fun Splinter Cell Blacklist is to play. It set the bar for the series moving forward and honestly, surprised the hell out of me, landing it in my top 5 games of 2013. The Last of Us is the poster child for promoting video games as a storytelling medium. Naughty Dog knocked it out of the park with what I now consider to be their magnum opus. The storytelling sensibilities that were honed in the fantastic Uncharted franchise are applied to wonderful effect here. The story of Joel and Ellie is without a doubt the most touching, realistic, genuine story I have ever witnessed unfold in the medium. From the opening moments of panic and devastation to Joel's developing pursuit of redemption 20 years later, no emotional stone is left unturned. Thanks to some of the best sound design and artistic direction in the business, The Last of Us surprised me by becoming one of the best survival horror games I've ever played. The experience never ceased to amaze from beginning to end. The minimal use of combat scenarios ultimately gave every encounter a weight and sense of desperation that so many games in the genre fail to realize. Like some of my favorite games in the genre, such as last year's I Am Alive, managing ammunition and clever use of crafting is the key to surviving. Wasting bullets can both cripple your defenses and alert other enemies to your presence. Ultimately though, The Last of Us made it so high on my list because of its pacing. I cherish the quiet, slower paced moments just as much as those filled with intensity and panic. The back and forth between characters while simply walking around and exploring the desolate world were among the best moments of the year in gaming. But I could talk about The Last of Us for quite a while, so I'm going to stop there. It is a game that absolutely must be experienced to be believed. It sets the bar for games going into the new generation of hardware, and cements Naughty Dog as one of my absolute favorite developers in the industry today. After sinking my teeth into games like Shadow Complex and Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, it's no wonder that I have started flocking to Metroidvania games like crazy. Guacamelee's hilarious but beautiful approach to Mexican folklore meshed perfectly with the fun and dexterous gameplay made famous by the genre. It's honestly hard to imagine a game like this toppling The Last of Us, but if I'm being honest with myself, the game got its hooks in me pretty damn deep. The game's colorful landscape, characters, and soundtrack help it boast one of the biggest personalities of the year. The interconnected areas that make up the game world are beautifully stylized, varied, and any connoisseur of game music must own this soundtrack. Traversal and platforming is so much fun in this game thanks to the ability to shift between two versions of the world on the fly. Some areas can only be accessed when in specific versions of the world, while other challenges require you to switch between them sometimes multiple times while platforming. It requires some patience and some serious dexterity, but it is so much fun to do. But let's be honest, how can you not love a game that lets you turn into a chicken? The game is also jam-packed full of really well thought out and insanely tough challenges that will test your commitment to gameplay. With that said, something about the design kept me coming back. This is the first game in a long time that I've bothered to 100%. But surprisingly, the highlight of the experience for me was actually the cross-play compatibility on the Vita. Playing the game on the TV at home was great, but being able to save my game and pick up exactly where I left off on the Vita was a dream. I can't stress this enough. Guacamelee is one of the best, if not the best, Metroidvania games I have ever played. It takes all the right cues from games like Castlevania and Shadow Complex and coats them in a fresh coat of paint that simply can't be missed. Drinkbox Studios is officially on my radar. Here we are, another year, another top 10, another open world Ubisoft game stealing my number 1 slot. And I'll be honest, I almost feel bad giving my game of the year to an Assassin's Creed game. Almost. If it weren't for the fact that Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag not only set the bar for future entries in the franchise, but blew my mind with things that I didn't think were possible in a video game. The game features the already established Assassin's Creed gameplay of previous games, but stands tall thanks to its revolutionary open ocean ship combat. As a ship captain, you have control over speed, trajectory, and even shanties sung by your crew. I absolutely adore how all the mechanics, whether on land or at sea, promote your development as a feared pirate of the Caribbean. It also takes a few notes from Far Cry 3, which was my game of the year last year, by allowing you to upgrade elements of your outfit by hunting animals and using their pelts. The game also looks absolutely stunning on the open ocean, especially on PC and next-gen hardware. The waves interact with the ship as you would expect them to, and sudden changes in weather can send you barreling into treacherous waters at the drop of a hat. Never have I ever felt more compelled to avoid fast travel in an open-world game as I do here. In fact, over the course of my 60-hour playthrough, I can count the number of times I fast traveled on one hand, and the world is enormous. It is filled to the brim with forts to liberate, whaling opportunities, underwater shipwrecks, and small islands or caves to explore off the beaten path. Most importantly, the experience is almost completely seamless and one of the most rewarding experiences of the year. Also, present-day sequences return, and as a fan of Assassin's Creed and its universe, I really appreciate the direction they went with here. I won't spoil anything, but the modern-day sequence is packed full of exciting Easter eggs that any fan simply shouldn't miss. Look, all I'm trying to say is that Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag is a damn fine game. In fact, it's the best game I played all year long. The advancements made to the series this time around are absolutely game-changing. It may be an annualized series, but they continue to capture my imagination every single year, and for that, I'm totally thankful. Well, there you have it. 2013 was an insanely good year for video games. New hardware abound and an overabundance of quality games to wade through. In fact, picking just 10 games to talk about was a real challenge. I look forward to seeing what 2014 has in store for us, and I hope you'll join us over at 4playernetwork.com. Later.